red-haired Ella bustled in the bakery. The scent of warm bread and the crackle of the oven filled the small shop, melding into the comforting aroma that had become the heartbeat of the Highland village. She bundled up pre-dawn, her cheeks already flushed from the oven's embrace, and set out on her bicycle with a basket brimming with freshly baked goods. Her mission was simple, yet vital to the village's rhythm. Deliver the bread that broke the fast and brought smiles to the faces of those she served. The chill of the Scottish morning kissed Ella's cheeks as she pedaled along the cobblestone streets, her breath misting in the crisp air. Daily route, cherished memories. As the village awoke, the cobblestones grew slick with dew, and the early light painted the ancient stones with a soft golden hue. Dawn's silence, roosters call, leaves whisper. Her final destination was the small cottage on the edge of the village, where Wally, the shepherd just a bit older than her, awaited his daily loaf with the dedication of a knight awaiting a royal decree. Wally, land-worn, hawk-eyed, each morning as Ella approached, she would see him leaning on the gate, his trusty border collie at his side, watching the village come to life. He'd tip his hat with a gentle nod, accepting the bread with a gruff, "Thank ya, lass!" his voice carrying the quiet strength of the mountains themselves. Ella felt the gentle tug of it in her chest as she pedaled away, leaving the village behind her, and the whispers of the wind carried the promise of a bond that might soon be woven into the very fabric of their lives. Wally vanished at sunrise. The gate to his property hung open, and a solitary lamb darted through the gap, bleating plaintively. Ella's brow furrowed with concern. Wally's collie, recognizing a friend, trotted over and nudged her with its wet nose. With the bread growing cold in her basket, she dismounted her bicycle and leaned it against the fence. The flask, tied to the gate, caught her eye. Wally's goatskin flask was usually filled with water to keep her hydrated on her rounds. She uncorked it and took a tentative sip, her eyes widening as the liquid burned a fiery path down her throat. It wasn't water, it was whiskey, the kind Wally had once shared with her father when they spoke of the old ways and the whispers of the land. Whiskey's warmth chased the chill, her head swam with a sudden influx of heat, and the world around her took on a dreamlike quality. The distant bleating grew fainter as she took another swig, feeling a strange sense of rebellious excitement mingle with the dizziness. It was unlike anything she'd ever experienced, and she felt as if she were peeking through a keyhole at a world that had always been out of reach. When Wally finally returned, his cheeks flushed from the chase, he found Ella's eyes closed as she slumped against the fence, her dress askew, and her eyes half closed. The lamb had been recovered, but Ella's condition now claimed his attention. He stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before he bent down and gently took the flask from her hand. The sun had fully risen by then, casting a golden glow over the scene, and Ella felt its warmth on her face as she looked up at him, a silent question hanging between them. Wally silently shared his flask. Whiskey sealed their shared secret. The whiskey's warmth spread through her once again, but this time, it brought clarity rather than confusion. Ella climbed onto her bike, the missing panties forgotten in the wake of the morning's revelation. The world spun slightly as she pedaled home, the cobblestones a blur beneath her. Flower scent embraced her warmly. Her father looked up from his dough, a furrow appearing between his brows. "Lass," he said, his voice thick with concern, "what's amiss?" Her words came out in a jumble about the bicycle gears giving her trouble, and she hoped the lie was convincing enough. Her father studied her momentarily before nodding and returning to his work. She retreated upstairs and put on clean panties, her secret pressing down on her like a leaden blanket. She focused on her deliveries for a few weeks, pushing aside the whispers that grew louder in her mind with each passing day. But when she missed her monthly cycle, the whispers grew to a roar. The realization struck her like a hammer to the chest, leaving her breathless. She touched her stomach, feeling the slightest swell, and her heart raced with fear and wonder. She was with child and knew it could only be Wally's. The whispers of the wind grew to a howl as the less trying to dam a river with a handful of earth. The watchtower, a relic of a time when the village had feared marauding clans, now stood as a stark reminder of the price of transgression. It was to this fortress of solitude that she was led, the cold stone walls seeming to close in around her with each step she took. The days turned to weeks, and the weeks to months. Within the cramped confines of the tower, Ella felt the weight of her impending motherhood grow heavier, alone within the walls by her pregnant self, with no bicycle, chained to a wall, echoing with the cries of loneliness and fear. Her father, heartbroken and ashamed, could only visit her in secret, his eyes brimming with silent apologies. Yet, amidst the shackles of her new reality, she found a strange solace in the thought of the child growing within her, a spark of life in the cold embrace of her punishment. But Wally did not abandon her. Each night, as the moon cast a silver veil over the land, he would arrive with a bundle of food and a softly spoken promise. "I'll fix this, lass," he'd murmur, his voice a balm to her aching heart. Darkness hid tales of freedom. The stale bread and lukewarm water were replaced with hearty stews and warm bread, the fruits of his labor, a silent testament to his love